I've worked dispatch for 11 years. I've taken calls from people who were dying. I've taken calls from people who were already dead and didn't know it yet. By which I mean they were sitting in a burning car, perfectly calm, telling me they were fine while I could hear the structure collapsing around them. I've heard things I don't talk about at home. So when I tell you that what happened last Tuesday scares me more than any of that, I need you to understand what that means coming from me. I'm not easily scared. I'm not the kind of guy who hears something strange and jumps to the worst explanation. I've spent over a decade being the calm voice on the other end of the worst moments of people's lives. That's the job. You don't get to fall apart. But last Tuesday is gone. And I don't mean I forgot it. I mean it isn't there. My name is Marcus. I work the overnight shift at a mid-sized dispatch center in the kind of county where nothing much happens. We handle police, fire, and EMS calls across a few small cities and a lot of farmland. On a busy night, we might log 80 calls. On a slow one, maybe 30. Tuesday nights are usually slow. I got to work at 10 p.m. that Tuesday, same as always. Signed in, did my handoff with the departing dispatcher, a woman named Kathy who has worked there almost as long as I have. I remember the handoff. Kathy said it had been quiet. She seemed tired. She left. I sat down, put on my headset, and that's where my memory gets unreliable. I remember the beginning of the shift. I remember the end. 8 hours later, at 6 in the morning, I signed out, drove home, slept, and didn't think about it. Nothing felt wrong. That's the part that keeps me up now. Nothing felt wrong. It wasn't until Thursday that I noticed anything. We run a quality assurance review every week. The supervisor pulls a random sample of calls from the past 7 days and listens back to check our protocol, our tone, our response times. Standard stuff. Thursday morning, I got an email from my supervisor, a guy named Randall, asking me to come in early for my shift to discuss the review. I figured I'd mess something up on a call. It happens. You miss a step, forget to confirm an address, something small. I wasn't worried. I went in, sat down across from Randall. He had his laptop open. He looked at me the way people look at you when they're not sure how to start a sentence. He said, "Marcus, I'm looking at the call logs from Tuesday night. Your shift." I said, "Okay." He turned the laptop around and showed me the screen. The log was empty, not blank like a software glitch. Not 0 calls, which would have been strange enough. The log showed that I'd clocked in at 10:02 p.m. It showed that I'd clocked out at 6:04 a.m. 8 hours accounted for. And in between those 2 timestamps, in the column where every call received, every incident number, every radio transmission should have been listed, there was nothing. Not a single entry. I told Randall that wasn't possible. He agreed. He'd already called IT. The IT tech, a young guy named Derek who I'd seen maybe twice before, came in and spent 45 minutes going through the system while Randall and I sat there. Derek kept making small sounds under his breath, the kind of sounds a person makes when they find something confusing but don't want to say so out loud. At the end of it, he told us the data wasn't corrupted, wasn't deleted, wasn't moved to a backup partition. It simply wasn't there. The system showed no record of any activity during my shift that Tuesday, as if the phones had been silent for 8 straight hours. I asked about the radio logs. Those are on a separate system. Derek checked. Same result. My voice was on the system. You could hear me sign in, do my initial equipment check, and then nothing for 8 hours until my sign-off. I asked about the police and fire departments. If I'd dispatched anyone that night, their records would show the incoming call. Randall called over to both. Police had no incidents logged between 10 p.m. Tuesday and 6 a.m. Wednesday that had come through our center. Fire had 1, a small kitchen fire that came in at 4:30 in the morning, logged as received from an automatic alarm system. No dispatcher involved. It looked, on paper, like nothing had happened that night. Except I remembered working. I remembered sitting at that console. I remembered the hum of the equipment, the glow of the monitors, the feel of the headset. I remembered being there. I just couldn't remember a single call. Randall sent me home and told me not to worry about it, that IT would keep digging. I could tell he wasn't as calm as he was trying to sound. On my way out, I stopped in the break room and ran into Kathy, who was coming in for her shift. I asked if she remembered anything unusual about Tuesday before she handed off to me. She thought about it, said no, said it had been a quiet evening, maybe 6 or 7 calls all night. Said it was one of the slowest Tuesdays she could remember. 6 or 7 calls before my shift, nothing during. I drove home and I sat in my car in the driveway for a while. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept trying to pull something back from Tuesday, some fragment of a call, some voice, some detail. There was nothing. Not the feeling of nothing where you try to remember something and it's just gone. This was different. When I reached for that memory, it was like reaching for a wall. Like something was there, something solid, but I couldn't get through it and I couldn't see the other side. I got up around 3 in the morning and started writing down everything I could recall from the shift. The drive in, the parking lot, the handoff with Kathy, sitting down at the console, the equipment check, and then the end of the shift, the drive home, the specific quality of the morning light. In 11 years, I had never lost time at work. I've been tired, I've been overworked, I've gotten through shifts running on 3 hours of sleep, but I have always been able to account for my time. That's the job. You are the record. You are the last line between someone's emergency and an organized response. You don't check out. Friday morning, I called Derek in IT and asked if he'd found anything. He said he was still looking. His voice was careful in a way that made me think he wasn't being completely straight with me. I asked him directly if there was anything else unusual about the logs. There was a pause. Then he said there was one thing, but he wasn't sure it was relevant. The system's internal clock, the one that timestamps every entry, had logged a single automated status ping at 3:17 a.m. Wednesday. These pings happen every hour, on the hour, as a routine system check. The previous ping before 3:17 was logged at 10 p.m. Tuesday, when I signed in. The next expected ping after 3:17 should have come at 4:17. It was logged at 6:04 a.m., exactly when I signed out. 5 pings missing, and the one that did log at 3:17 was off cycle by 17 minutes. I asked what that meant. Derek said he didn't know. He said he'd never seen the ping cycle behave that way before. He said he was going to flag it with the system vendor. I thanked him and hung up, and I thought about 3:17 a.m. I thought about what I might have been doing at 3:17 a.m. Tuesday night that could have caused a system clock to hiccup. Then I thought about something else. Something small that I had almost dismissed. When I signed out at 6 in the morning, I had written a note in the physical logbook. We keep a handwritten log at the console as a backup. Habit, mostly. Old protocol that nobody officially requires anymore. I had written my sign-out time and 2 words below it, in my own handwriting, that I could not remember writing. I'd assumed it was a note to myself about something routine. I hadn't looked at it closely. I went back to the center that afternoon before my shift and found the logbook. Below my sign-out time in my handwriting were the words, "Don't ask." I've spent the past week trying to find a rational explanation for those 2 words. I've told myself I wrote them as a reminder about something mundane, an internal matter I wasn't supposed to discuss, a personnel thing. Something Randall had said to me at some point that I'd mentally tagged as sensitive. I've run through every version of that explanation I can construct, and none of them hold up, because not one of them explains why I have no memory of writing it, and no memory of anything I was told not to ask about. I talked to two of the officers who work the overnight shift in our coverage area. Both of them cover Tuesday nights regularly. I asked, as casually as I could, if they'd had any unusual calls last Tuesday. The first one said no, slow night, nothing notable. The second one stopped walking and looked at me for a moment before he answered. He said, "You were on Tuesday, right?" I said yes. He said, "Then you know?" I told him I was having some issues with the system logs and was trying to piece together the shift. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Marcus, leave it alone." He walked away. I called after him. He didn't stop. I haven't been able to get him alone since. He's been unavailable, off shift, or simply walking the other direction when he sees me coming. Whatever he knows, he's decided not to tell me. And the way he said leave it alone, it wasn't hostile. It wasn't a threat. It was the voice I use when I'm telling a caller not to go back into a burning building. It was a warning from someone who was genuinely worried about me. That scared me more than anything else. I'm posting this because I don't know what else to do. I've thought about going to someone above Randall. I've thought about hiring someone to do a deeper forensic pull on the system. I've thought about hypnosis, which I know sounds desperate. But when you are standing in front of a wall in your own memory, you start considering tools you would have laughed at a week ago. What I keep coming back to is this. 30 or 40 people called 911 that night. Standard volume for a Tuesday. Those people had emergencies. Those emergencies were apparently handled. No one died because of a gap in the system, or at least no one has told me that anyone did. The county didn't burn down. The world kept moving. But those people called, and someone answered. And whatever was said on those calls, whatever I heard and responded to over 8 hours, is behind a wall I can't get past, in a system that shows nothing, in a logbook that ends with 2 words I wrote to myself. Don't ask. I'm back on shift tomorrow night. Tuesday, I don't know if I'm gonna go in.